Well, there were two rather startling stories involving Afghanistan this week, and they both give cause to consider Australia's continued involvement there. A newly released report from the Australian Defence Force Inspector General finds credible evidence 25 serving and former Australian Special Force soldiers carried out war crimes in Afghanistan. That includes 39 unlawful killings.
It's alleged that some patrols took the law into their own hands. Rules were broken, stories concocted, lies told, and prisoners killed.
Also, the Pentagon announced it's withdrawing more than 2,000 US troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. Given the American pullout and our decreased standing in the country, is it time we ended our involvement in the 19-year conflict?
A day of infamy and the trigger of conflict which would span decades. Nearly 3,000 people were killed in the coordinated terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. Most of the 19 terrorists were from Saudi Arabia. The masterminds were believed to be based in Afghanistan. US President George W. Bush declared a war on terror to root out al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban from power.
These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations.
Then Prime Minister John Howard, who was visiting the US on 9/11, was in lockstep with his American counterpart. Australia joined the so-called Coalition of the Willing, sending specialist forces. What was thought to be a simple operation turned into the United States' longest-running military engagement. After almost 20 years and well over 100,000 civilian and combat deaths, coalition troops are still there.
In the valley, we were attacked 365 out of 365 days.
Retired Major Danny Surgeon commanded around 200 US Afghan troops during the US surge of 2011-12. He believes the mission was destined to fail.
It was farce, largely. It was an absurdity. 100,000 American soldiers, or at my micro level, 100 soldiers in charge of a sub-district where the people either support the Taliban outright or they support their general vague goals. But the one thing they all agree on is that we really probably shouldn't be there.
It's believed to have cost the US more than $2.4 trillion. The Washington Post's Afghan Papers investigation revealed consecutive US administrations misled the public on the cost and success of the conflict. Though removed from power, the Taliban is still a powerful force. It reclaimed vast areas of the country in the 2015 surge, utilising safe havens and supplies from across the Pakistan border. And in 2018, President Trump backed peace talks. In February this year, a major milestone.
The United States and the Taliban have inked an agreement that could signal the end of the nearly two-decade-long conflict in Afghanistan.
Talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban have stalled. The sectarian attacks continue. Donald Trump has long promised to send the troops home. President Trump sacked several Pentagon staff and his defense secretary, seemingly to get his way before leaving office. While not a complete pullout, the Pentagon this week said more than 2,000 troops will leave Afghanistan and Iraq.
This is consistent with our established plans and strategic objectives, supported by the American people, and does not equate to a change in U.S. policy or objectives.
There are around 400 Australian Defence Force personnel in Afghanistan as part of a NATO training mission. 41 Australian soldiers have been killed and 261 wounded over 19 years. And just like in 2001, there are calls for Australia to follow the United States' lead in heading home.
South Asia and the Middle East are no place for Australian forces these days. We should be focusing closer to home and security closer to home, quite frankly, and be done with our expeditionary forces in coalition with the United States.
What is happening in Afghanistan today is a highly contentious dispute over political control within Afghanistan that does not necessarily pose a threat to Australia. It does not necessarily pose a threat to the United States. And so if we believe that a military mission is supposed to be first and foremost about advancing a country's core security interests, I think it's reasonable to question whether or not the military mission is actually doing that. And I would say it hasn't been doing that for a number of years now.